this afternoon. He had a meeting in Madison. So, was there proof of notification?
We were posted, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We have a, I think, 27-point agenda. I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Cooey, seconded by Mr. Murphy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We have,
Aye.
oh, we have some people online. Tim and who else is there? Melissa. Okay. And a lot of other folks. Okay. Public comment. Do we have any public comment today? Okay. I, as the chairman of this committee, I believe that public comment is an important thing, agenda item. And I look to having it more of part of the whole process in the future, as we are going to be embarking on several items coming up now as we make our way through the budget and agenda, and as we try to do all of the things that we want to do with finite resources. So there will be opportunity for the public to comment those things. We have a number of consent items, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, previous meeting minutes. I think that's a good thing to have under consent. Amendments to the Richland County Handbook, WCA, Wisconsin Counties Association Resolution on Shared Revenue, contract for property and liability insurance, and Highway Department position changes. Now, the consent area of the agenda, we've been doing that now for since the new board year began. I'm going to comment on a couple items there, and I'm assuming, and I implore you to acquaint yourselves with all of the additional material that is presented to you prior to the meeting. And there were several amendments to the Richland County Handbook. I think procedural things and taking out county clerk, for instance, and putting in administrator wording. The Wisconsin Counties Association resolution is a resolution that we want to address and send it along. And we are going to, Sean Murphy Lopez authored this, did a fine job. And there's a nice accompanying information showing how our shared revenue from the state, even though our expenses have gone up dramatically, the shared revenue has gone down. And something has to be done, and it'll have to be done at the state level. We're going to introduce this resolution if we pass it along. This committee and the board as a whole pass it along. It will be introduced to the Wisconsin Counties Association at the fall meeting, and hopefully they'll adopt it as a plank in their platform. Sure they will. I can't see any reason why they would not. Other things, insurance contracts, Highway Department position changes, pretty cut and dried. So if there are no objections, I'm going to move down to, did you have a comment, Mr. Langriff? Nope. You moved and grabbed the mic. Okay. Okay.
Mr. Chair, can I make a motion that we approve all 5 items?
You may do that.
at
Thank you.
once?
Thank you. Motion by Sean Murphy Lopez to approve.
Williamson will second.
Williamson seconds. All those in favor of the consent item approval signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Mr. Seep, did I hear?
I think that was Mr. Gotcho. Was that Supervisor Gotcho? You are
Yes.
not?
Oh boy.
No. I voted yes.
Yes.
Thank
Your,
you.
your broadcast voice reminded me of Mr. Seep when I heard it, so, yeah.
I'll begrudgingly take that as a compliment.
So deep and resident and thoughtful. Okay,
right.
thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
we did have a request if we could move, consider moving, it would be flat item number, where is that one at? 18, if we could consider moving number 18 in front of the action items for the sake of getting our land surveyor back out amongst the
so
countryside.
we want him out there in the countryside, so I have no objection to that, so we will move item number 18 on the agenda up in order and consider it right now. And that is a plat of survey financing question from Land and Zoning Standing Committee.
Mr. Chair, in your packet, you'll see item number 18. It's recommend to review a proposal of plat survey mapping rules and decisions and funding sources. The background on this information is listed in there. Surveyors are required by Wisconsin State Statute 5945 to file plat surveys within 60 days of field work. The web page was built by the county's MIS department, allows access, but there were glitches in the system causing surveys to disappear from the website. County surveyor Todd Rumler has contacted Sauk County, who has a very nice system to find it. There is a link on there, and then there is a proposal for MSA, potential contract between $19,200 and $29,500 to move to be able to execute this. You had a petition then also from the Land and Zoning Committee to approve the proposal and to bring it forward to these to yourselves. There are two different types of consent rules that you have. County Board Resolution allows the Land Conservation Committee to move forward with project costings up to $50,000. Then we also kind of have the same type of a language, but a different threshold underneath our committee structure document, which allows up to $30,000. In discussion with that committee yesterday, I've asked them to put it on a future agenda item to consider what that threshold should be and make a recommendation to rules and strategic planning on shaking out the two on a 30 versus a 50. We did take a look at this from an administrator's perspective, and the authority to move forward with the purchase is granted by your existing rules, and this was also reviewed by Corporation Counsel. So those are the elements of it. I would defer to Administrator Bindle or to our Surveyor Rumler if there's additional information that needs to be shared regarding.
Mr. Bindle, comment?
So no action is necessarily needed unless you want to say throw on the brakes and do something different. Otherwise, it's going to be going forward with an existing contract with an existing partner. I think we have a relationship with MSA to conduct this project.
I have a question. I remember when I was on your committee, Mike, talking about monument relocation, getting those. Is this part of that or no? All right. Okay, thank you for the report. Guess no questions. You can go off and survey. Okay, takes us back then to item number 10, discussion and possible action on the Pine Valley Solar Project. And Administrator Rislow is here, I see, from Pine Valley, so pass the mic over to Administrator Rislow.
Testing 1, 2. Okay. Good afternoon. I'll just read off the agenda item cover sheet, the recommendation for a motion to present a resolution to the county board for approval for Pine Valley Community Village to 1, enter into an agreement with Solar Connection Inc. from Unalaska, Wisconsin for the construction of a 180 kilowatt approximately 150 kilowatt AC solar array to be ground mounted on Pine Valley property east of County O for a sum not to exceed $285,000. And two, enter in a financial agreement with the tax sponsor, Richland County resident Ray Schmitz, for the funding of the solar array. I'll skip down to the bottom of that page. The number of panels are listed there for you at 334. Approximate size of the array is about a third of an acre. Percentage of annual electrical needs estimated to be provided by the array was 17%. Estimated annual savings, 17,300 in 2023, and that would go up, estimated by 2% each year. We also went for a grant, thanks to, and I will take this time to mention people on the line from Pine Valley, our Therese Deckard, our business office manager, Steve Alexander, environmental services supervisor, and Kurt Reinhold, the CEO and president of Legacy Solar, is also on the line and has been a key person in this whole project. They were aware of the grant through Solar for Good, and we had some work to do with that, and they submitted on our behalf, and we did get news of that just a few days ago, that we were awarded that grant, valued at $51,000. Funds for a buyout in year 6 to come from Pine Valley Capital Fund. Funds needed to put aside for the first 5 years in order to cover the cost of that buyout would be $33,000 a year for 5 years, or $165,000. And I'll comment more on that in a little bit. And then for the handouts that I believe that were part of the packet, I just wanted to just mention what they were. I had it labeled as page 1. I'll wait till Clint pulls it up. Should say Legacy Solar Co-op on the top. This page and the next page just give the background of Legacy Solar Co-op and how the system for financing works and how they're involved in the project. So that's why I provided that to you for. And specific questions about them can be submitted to Kurt, since he's on the line with us. Page 3 of the handouts was just a background on what got us to this point. And obviously, I'll skip down towards the bottom where it says June 2022 documents prepared for this committee meeting today. And the timeline going forward would be after this meeting, we would work on continuing to finalize contractual arrangements with Ray, and potentially there's a partner with him as well. And then we'd run that past corporate council. We would present to the county board and hopefully do this project later this year. But we have some hoops to jump through, and obviously you probably have some concerns as well. Page 4 of the handout is a return on investment estimate for you. It was a starting point that was used with the potential investors to fund this. This is only a starting point, and we're learning already in negotiations that these numbers will change, but at least gives you an idea of the savings, payments that Pine Valley would be expected to make, the annual benefits, and then the cumulative benefit over the course of several decades. So it gives you an idea going forward. And then page 5 was some key points that will most likely be a part of the agreement with the investors going forward. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. If they're about solar, I'm not an expert on that at all, but I've learned quite a bit in this process.
Okay, I'll open it up to questions. Mr. Carroll.
Yeah, there's a lot to absorb here, but I'm looking at the legacy savings spreadsheet. Just wondering if you or the committee has independently reviewed and agree with a lot of the assumptions that are built into this. I noticed they assume that the inverters would replace at year 20, but I know solar panels themselves typically only last 25 years. I don't see that addressed. A more general question, like I say, is there's a lot of assumptions built in here, and I wondered if you guys have worked through those and feel like this can be passed on at this point.
I'll ask Kurt if you'd want to respond. Kurt Reinhold from Legacy Solar is on the line.
Mr. Reinhold, are you available?
I saw his name up there earlier. No, he intended.
Down in the corner there.
We're not hearing you, Kurt, if you are talking, so. We'll have to go on to another question and come back to that once Kurt figures out.
Right. Mr. Manning.
I'm sorry, if he's talking, we can't hear him.
Making sure. All right, I'll start over again. I'm wondering about the placement of the panels. A main concern is the land swap. We've already started with the Umpion family, if it affect that at all.
I'm not aware of the details of the land swap. I was aware of the initial idea of it a year and a half or so ago. But as far as where these panels are located, they're just next to the lift station across from County O. And from the get-go, I was concerned about Al, just making sure that he was aware. And so I talked to him on the phone. I've emailed him. He's been to my office in person, and I provided him an overhead picture of exactly where this would occur if it came to be, which is a long ways from being approved. So he knows exactly where it would lie.
Talk with David, that's who I've been talking with as far as the 2 acres. He wants to switch for 2 acres of ours. And I know it's close to that lift plan. So we might want to look into that a little more.
Okay. All right, thanks, Gary. Mr. Carroll?
One more question. This spreadsheet assumes 5% annual return. Is that what they mean by the discount rate for bringing everything to present value, or what do they mean by that?
Yeah, that'd be a perfect question for Kurt. I'm sorry that he's not able to.
Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay, I just called in because for some reason I wasn't able to get the audio to work on the computer. My apologies. Yes, that discount rate is for the investors' side a 5% discount rate. On the Richland, Pine Valley side, so on Pine Valley side, we're assuming a 2% escalator on average for the value of the electricity that would be supplied by the solar array. So it's 2% for Pine Valley. For the tax investors, we assumed a 5% discount rate, and the 5% annual return is actually within the average of what we see for other projects like this. The Legacy Solar Co-op works with municipalities, churches, libraries, schools all over the state. And on average, a tax sponsor, depending on their tax bracket, can see anywhere between a 5 and a 10% return on their investment, and that's part of that is based on their the tax bracket in which they pay taxes. So someone who pays 15% tax bracket rate is going to have a lower return. Someone who pays 32% is going to have a higher return. But 5 to 7% is what we're anticipating the tax sponsor would see as a yield after tax from this project.
Kurt, there was a question from Supervisor Carroll about the warranties on the panels and on the inverters.
Oh, sure, sure.
The
So
assumptions.
I'm sorry. We set the assumption at 20 years for the inverters because we're purchasing a 20-year warranty. So they'll be covered until 20 years. And if Murphy's Law takes effect, in year 20, after the warranty period has expired, you may incur a cost to replace that inverter. The solar panels have a 25-year warranty, but that does not mean that they will stop working in 25 years. That just means that they will be replaced if they fall below a certain threshold of output by year 25. After year 25, the manufacturer is not warranting performance, but the industry standard that we've seen from the days of NASA all the way up through in 70s and 80s in California through the solar panels that are produced today is an average of 0.5% per year in degradation. So we're showing the output and the value of the solar electricity degrading by 0.5% per year, for 40 or 50 years. There's no cliff off which the solar panel will just stop working. Generally, they'll just be less effective.
Steve, follow up?
Yeah, a follow-up. My general question was who's gone through and confirmed or agrees with all the assumptions in your spreadsheet. That was just one example. So you're saying that you have calculated the output based on its normal degradation over time?
Right. The way we went through the process was using a request for proposal. We took the data that was presented by the potential vendors before we selected, before Tom and the committee selected the vendors. We provided a comparison in order to compare the different vendors' expectations on what they would promise for the kilowatt hours. We created our own numbers, and so we levelized that value by using the industry standard that we applied to all three vendors. So we were not relying on the vendors' estimate. We were relying on an independent estimate.
Yes, Mr. Murphy.
I just want to say, I think this looks like a great long-term savings to the county and to Pine Valley Community Village. So I'd like to go ahead and make the motion that resolution be presented to the county board to enter into both of those agreements.
Okay, motion has been made to pass the resolution from committee to the board. Do I have a second?
Williamson seconds.
Williamson seconds. All those in favor of passing this solar resolution to the county board signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Well, all right, Mr. Manning, one more question. Check out that 2-acre parcel, Tom. Make sure we're not.
My other question is, the length, the longevity of this, does that take into active gods such as tornadoes, hailstorms, and all that? Is that covered even under what's considered act of God.
Kurt, you're still there with us?
Yeah, if you can still hear me, my answer to that would be twofold. First, you have the manufacturer's warranty as one, set of expectations for at least 25 years of performance. Beyond that, you have insurance that, just like insurance for crops or for buildings, the insurance will cover a replacement value for anything that's damaged, by an act of God.
Okay. Right, thank you. Thank you, Steve,
Thank you, Kurt.
hanging in there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. All right, takes us then to item number 11, emergency medical service study, the use of ARPA funds. You have an agenda item cover, Mr. Langrid.
Aaron's back here. I'll get it teed up, Darren. We just started here. Looking for today for a motion to approve ARPA funds for the purpose of hiring strategic management consultant to conduct a study on the delivery of emergency medical services in the county. Background on this item is the Joint Ambulance Committee and Administrator Langrick are requesting ARPA funding to proceed to procure services of the EMS consultant to review how emergency medical services are currently being delivered by the county. The RFP was sent out to 4 consultant firms, only one replied back. The study will provide invaluable information to the Joint Ambulance Committee surrounding ambulance services, the county administrator and county board, and will aid in future planning and the decisions about delivery of pre-hospital care in Richland County. Attached with that, then you'll find a copy of the response to the request for proposals. The bottom line on it is it's looking for a $25,500 fee with it. Recently, I've been getting educated on doing fees, and this would be a block fee upfront, not an hourly cost by consultant. You may want to consider negotiations in the final contract of trying to tease out more hours versus a block payment on product and understanding what the deliverables are. But that being said, I would turn it over to Director Gudgeon if you have some further comments that you'd like to make the committee aware of regarding this study and then our vendor.
Thank you, Administrator Langrick. Everybody hear me okay? So when this was first brought up to Finance and Personnel, I think it was nearly 2 months ago. There were some concerns from the Finance and Personnel members that they wanted to be sure that all of the ambulance services in the county were kind of brought in and up to speed and knew what was going on with this. And I've been able to reach out to all of them, but 2, still making attempts to get a hold of them. They're both kind of in the same region, so I'm hoping I can just get them to one location, travel to them, and then visit with them one-on-one in person. So most of the comments that I got back from the remaining EMS chiefs in the area about the study was, one, they were wanting to make sure that the process was transparent. 2, again, they had some fear that maybe this was the county trying to take everything over. And basically what I told them was what I mentioned in my previous comments in front of you before, was this is just really a tool for all service directors in our area and for you and the committee that oversees this to be able to have a really good understanding of what's transpiring in EMS here, and then use that report as a tool to find a path forward for all the services, not just necessarily Richland County. However, for you specifically, this would give Finance, Personnel, County Board, the Joint Ambulance Committee, the administrator, some deeper insight into the values, or the pros and cons, I guess. I'm going to use that instead. Pros and cons of having an ambulance service being under the county versus what other options are out there, and how viable are those. At the end, I think all of us want the same thing, which is a strong EMS system that is responsible to the taxpayer, that is a good custodian of the money that's given to them, and deliver high quality care at the same time. So I think a study like this could be very useful. Many of the members of the Joint Ambulance Committee, after reviewing this, were in support of it. There were 3 members that weren't necessarily against it, but did question the need for it right now. But again, they did support it I also have reached out to Amy Nels. Amy Nels is the director of Dodge County Emergency Management, and we've been conversing back and forth about EMS. Dodge County is looking at what are they going to do for EMS in their area too. Are they going to do a county-run system? Are they going to continue to try to support a multi-department kind of service? And one of the questions that I completely forgot to ask her during all of our conversations is, were you satisfied with this consultant? So I just reached out to her moments ago, again, to get some feedback. She's in a class right now, so I'm not sure if I'm going to get that in time, but she's a contact that I've worked with at the state level on various committees and would certainly trust her for taking input on this particular consultant.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question. How come only one entity responded to our request?
That I don't know. There's 4 entities that I'm aware of that do these types of studies. That contact information for all 4 of those consultants was given to me by the president of the Wisconsin EMS Association. He is also an individual that does some consulting, but I think maybe he opted out just because we had several conversations about county EMS districts and that kind of stuff. The other 2 consultants, I have no idea. We did hear from one of them via phone. And it appeared that they were going to send in a request to our RFP, but the only one that gave us anything was consultant management, strategic management consulting.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
I have is, were you able to check the other references here that they listed?
No, I did not follow up with those.
Okay, so between that and the issue of that Mr. Lengrook was mentioning about, I can't remember the term you used to using it as a lump sum. Sometimes a contractor will ask for a lump sum payment up front versus other, versus other ones will do time and expense. So I was just looking at that 18A attachment that we had about zoning and the surveyor. And there it says that all costs will be invoiced based on time and expense. And I'd be interested to know if this consultant would be open to that, because if they don't use all the time up, they get paid that entire 25 grand, versus even if they only do 20 grand's worth of work. So I guess in my mind, maybe it's a better idea to postpone this until you're able to check the references and see if they'll be okay with time and expense invoicing. So I'll make a motion to postpone. Yep.
Making a motion to postpone. And I have a second from Mr. Williamson. I think we can discuss this. Can we? Can. What do you think? Mr. Carroll?
If we decide to wait for references, does this mess up any timeline on when this needs to happen?
Well, I did have a conversation with Mr. Seckler, and there are other projects that they're looking at taking on, kind of in hold with this one right now. So, but you know, again, I don't think that I think it's prudent, and you know, I should have contacted those other references and I didn't, so that's on me. I think that does need to be done. I think that's important. I focused on Miss Nels because I know her really well, and I knew that I would get honest feedback, and that's kind of overshadowed speaking to those others, but I think that would be wise to do. So I don't know that it's going to be anything catastrophic that would set us back that far.
Okay, any other comments on postponement? Mr. Manning?
Going on at the REC building, can you give us an update on that?
Well, gotta hold off on that. 1 second here. Are we ready to vote on the postponement?
One question, Chair. Will that, if you start this all over, are you gonna have to out to all them for rebidding?
I don't know that we will have to, only because it was a request for proposal. So we sent them a scoping document and then requested that all four of those consultants, if they were interested, return back with, this is kind of what we've done. This is what the estimated costs were, and then just one phone call, making sure that they knew what the scope was. So I don't know that you'd have to send it out again.
And this 25.5 is an estimated cost, or this is what they would do the work that you requested for that dollar amount?
That's their response to it. We would still have to enter into an agreement, but that's what they're saying for the scope of what we're asking for, their estimated costs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or concerns before we vote on postponement, taking it up at a later time? Go, okay, all those in favor of postponing signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, this item is postponed, but then I will allow Mr. Manning to direct the question at Director Gudgeon, since he's sitting right in front of us.
I can't go anywhere. We have a pre-construction meeting tomorrow with the gentleman from Joe Daniels Construction. So they'll be staging equipment sometime this week, and they're still on schedule to have the building completed by September 1st. Electricians and HVAC should be coming in the next, I'd say probably next week.
Okay, thank you. Number 12, a discussion and possible action on utilization policy for American Rescue Plan Act funds. Mr. Langrick.
Mr. Chair, looking for a motion today to recommend resolution of the Richland County Board to adopt a policy on expenditure of remaining American Rescue Plan Act funds. Background on this is Richland County Finance Personnel Committee initially adopted appropriations of the ARPA funds into 10% public health response, 10% negative economic impacts, 10% premium pay for essential workers, 20% water, sewer, broadband infrastructure, and 50% for lost revenues. This appropriation was based on the interim guidance. The later published final rule gave further leniency in the uses of these funds. This policy is set in place to help manage the remaining portions of the relief funds within the limits of the final rule guidance and the best interest of Richland County. This policy is intended to complement Richland County's financial planning, capital planning, and the 2023-2024 annual operating budget. Included then behind that, item number 12A, you'll see a policy in our format, which kind of lays out, much like you would have seen last month with utilization of Fund 75 and 92, a breakdown on where the funds are going to be expended, the allocation timeline. Do keep in mind that utilization of these funds, we have to have them obligated by December 31st, 2024, and then we have to have all expenditures no later than December 31st, 2026. That being said, there's a breakdown, Appendix B in the back, which breaks down, you're looking at the columns going across. Again, the darker lines are indicating what the finance and personnel initially allocated the pie, if you will. And then the recommendation on the right is essentially a reappropriation for specified items, shifting some of the appropriation amounts. You'll see here that we still have, I didn't change that. This is supposed to be assessment here. It's not a very good abbreviation, and I apologize for young viewers at home. We do have negative impacts here for this one here, the negative impacts number 2. We do have $335,000 initially, and then we've already pushed that out and expended it. Premium pay for workers, to date, we've expended the $120,000, so we're looking to reappropriate that. Our water, broadband, and sewer infrastructure, we still have the $590,000 Laval Telephone Company project that's still out there. That has not been approved. I think Josh said sometime in June the state is going to be making decisions on which projects are going to receive those grants. But right now this would call for an appropriation of a higher amount beyond 20%. And then finally, kind of the big one then there is adding then, along with our existing ones, we had several petitions here today. The rubber roof replacement, change work order over the other end of the courthouse here, over at the ambulance garage and over at the jail. and then reappropriating $1,673,845.55 to use in 2023-2024 operational budgets. As we had talked about, this is kind of seen as a bit of a padding and a cushion to allow for continued years of prioritizing services and finding out which non-mandated services potentially can continue to exist, trying to supplement then mandated services until they can potentially be decreased in their expenditures or until we can find some other revenue sources. So that is the reappropriation scheme, and it kind of ties in then with future conversations as we go through a financial planning process and into a 2023 annual budget, 2024 annual budget. Mr. Chair.
Are you looking for a motion, Mr. Langrick?
Yes, I am. I'm looking for a motion to recommend resolution of the Richland County Board to adopt a policy on expenditure of the remaining American Rescue Plan Act funds.
Okay,
I'll make the motion.
thank you, Mr. Cooley. Do we have a second? Mr. Manning seconds. Questions? Mr. Carroll?
The nearly half, the 1.6 million that will be used for padding the operational revenues. What, if we approve this, will that lock in on that, or could it still be, let's say there's another unexpected capital expense in the coming year, could it still be rerouted?
Good question. Yes, the language up here then would allow then for this body to adjust those expenditures. So if they need to be adjusted, it's outside the policy scope here, we'll bring it back to you folks to make adjustments.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any other questions on the and to kind of earmark where those ARPA funds are? And I'll take a vote. All those in favor of the recommendation signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Okay, Mr. Langrick, we've approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Takes us then down to which one are we on?
Number 13, I believe,
Number
Mr. Chair.
13. Discussion and possible action on increase on-call compensatory time reimbursement rate for HHS. And I see Roxanne Klubertans has come forward. And who is going to present this?
I will defer to Interim Director Klubertans.
Thank you.
All righty. So this motion is actually to approve an amendment to the Health and Human Services Addendum. We're looking to increase our on-call compensatory time reimbursement rate. So it has been at the same rate for about over the last 10 years, which has been $1.25 for evenings, Monday through Friday, and then for weekends and holidays, it goes to $1.50. So we're recommending a motion to approve amendments to the addendum to the employee handbook in order to increase the hourly on-call pay to $2 per hour for on-call duty and $2.50 for on-call holiday duty, and then forward the recommendation onto the court to the county board. With that as well, the background, as far as background goes, Child and Youth Services has a mandatory requirement to provide a mechanism to receive reports of child abuse and neglect 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Richland County's mechanism to receive and screen these reports of abuse and neglect timely is to provide an access intake worker during normal work hours as part of the duties assigned to Child and Youth Services staff. During the overnight, weekend, and holiday hours, Child and Youth Services generate an on-call calendar for a case manager and a supervisor to be on call during those hours that the agency is closed. Although the on-call responsibilities are expected as a part of their employment as a Child and Youth Services case manager, the stipend that is currently approved does not compensate for the hours that these staff sacrifice with their families to provide the service, nor has there been an increase, like I said, for at least 10 years. The increase allows for a recruitment and retention effort within the unit, specifically due to this being a required portion of the position. The unit does see their staff take other positions within the county and outside of the county as well to remove the responsibilities and being on call as part of their job duties. As far as paying for this increase, it would be absorbed within the current Child and Youth Services budget, and there would be no tax levy required.
Thank you. On-call time sounds easy, but it isn't, because it requires you to be available. And if you're called, then you have to serve or respond. So I think this is a real good deal myself. Do I have a motion? I'll make the motion then, that we approve this. Do I have a second to my motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll second. Tim.
Okay, Mr. Gotchel, I'll let you second, okay? Because I can't see you, but thank you for that second. All those in
Mr.
favor
Chair,
then?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Murphy.
Sorry to throw a wrench in this one, but so what's our on-call time for other departments? Couldn't
Well,
find the addendums anywhere. I was looking for those on our iPads for the meeting.
I don't know. I would, well, Sheriff Porter is here. Do we have on-call compensation? Okay. The highway department, I would guess. Mark, anything? Or Steve? You guys are on highway? Well, but
I don't think we're doing on-call there. I think we're doing on-call at MIS, and Tom's got on-call. Yeah, those I think are the on-calls I'm tracking.
yeah, can somebody who has on-call give us a hand here and tell us how they compare? Pine Valley is going. Looking for the blue light, Tom, on top.
Is on?
Yes.
So we have several nurse supervisors who serve on call, and then the pay comes out to about $1.88 per hour, which is inadequate, and so we planned on submitting an increased request in our 2023 budget proposal.
Can I
Murphy.
just, yeah, can I just follow up? So it's not that I don't support an on-call increase, but my concern, and this kind of goes back to our last county board meeting, there was a 15-3 vote. A few people were opposed to giving bonuses to HHS employees. I see there's another agenda item here for the sheriff's department to get a bonus mid-year using budget leftovers from last year. And I guess my hesitation with this, and obviously with, the item at county board, that was state funding. We were going to lose out on that state funding. It was going back to the state of Wisconsin. So that's why I was okay with it at that point. But this is starting to get into, now I'm seeing everyone coming, looking for this stuff. And I just hope we can, my wish, if I could get my wish, would be to have some sort of this included in our compensation policy. How are we going to handle these bonuses and mid-year requests and all this stuff? I just wish it could be a little more holistic and we look at all departments instead of just onesies. So I'm not supportive of this item at this time because of that issue. I think we need to be, this was always our problem. We were just dealing with little issues
Right,
here.
well, that's why we hired an administrator, and you can vote against it, right?
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment?
Yes, you may.
Okay, so one of the other reasons that we're looking at this is we continue to have a recruitment issue and a retention issue. And our children's workers are working a lot of hours, and they are out there tirelessly. And they're out there and they're working these positions with a lot of at-risk individuals in our community. They haven't seen an increase for a very long time. So it really, for us, as we sit down and look at it, we can absorb it into our budget. And it is important to make sure that we are able to retain the staff that we have. So I just want to make sure that I.
Yeah, thank you, and
across.
especially with Child Protective Services. The image I have in my mind is drug task force raiding a residence, and there are 3 or 4 little kids in diapers, and deputies are going, give them a teddy bear, but somebody's got to take care of those. And I know that happens. I know it does. So I'm all in favor of this. But are we ready to vote? Those in favor of the increase in, we calling it standby, on call, increase, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Okay, one no, motion carries. Number 14, a discussion and possible action on public health consultant for community needs assessment and community health improvement plan with use of ARPA funds. I know that Rose Cahoot, our public health officer, is here to present. Or are you, Mr. Langren? You're deferring to Rose? Okay. Take it away, Rose.
Thank you so much. Is this on? I have a hard time hearing when I'm hearing myself. Thank you so much. Yes, I'm making a request that the Finance and Personnel Committee take into consideration the Public Health Unit's ability to retain a consultant to work on our community health assessment and our community health improvement plan. Statutorily, public health is required every 5 years to begin the process of surveying our county to determine health priorities and then to create a plan to support initiatives to address those priorities. Given the competing interests that public health has right now, specifically still being very, very actively involved in our COVID-19 pandemic response, and then beginning the process of restoring essential services that were placed on hiatus during the pandemic. And also there's an expectation based upon some of our categorical funding that we normally receive to begin new initiatives. We are definitely staying very busy. The CHAW and CHIP, that's the vernacular for the community health assessment and the community health improvement project, our plan, are long-term projects. They can take anywhere from 9 months to a year in duration. Significant time and effort is placed on those who are involved in that process. And all of the nurses right now who are engaged in our pandemic response and the other activities are busy all throughout the day at this time. And so knowing that we've come off the so much time and effort that it's difficult to even consider recruiting some of the staff for this project, but yet knowing the depth and breadth of such, it definitely was something that made me consider utilizing a consultant. I reached out to, I believe, Betsy Raisler. She was our community health educator who worked in public health before. She's very familiar with Dorothy Cheney, who is the consultant that we received a proposal from. Ms. Cheney comes highly recommended, and she has been instrumental in helping other counties in Wisconsin secure grant funding and the like. I believe she works specifically with Juneau County, and if memory serves me correctly, she helped them to secure, I think, a drug-free communities grant, which was hundreds of thousands of dollars. But one of her strong suits is working with counties or local health departments to create community health assessments and its accompanying community health improvement plan. I will also be working with her, so even though we would like to entertain her supporting us in that regard, I would also be in a position to assist her as well with that effort. So we are already in the process of obligating at least one staff person to assist her with this project.
And if I may ask, Rose, we're required to do this
We are indeed. And
at least a 5-year cycle.
yes. And if we look at the total amount she's requesting, if we divide it by 5 years, we're looking at about $8,000 a year, based upon a request from Mr. Murphy Lopez. Did I say your name correctly? Yeah. We did determine that when Ms. Cheney performs work, she tends to bill 1/3 upon a contract being signed, she would bill 1/3 of the charges halfway through the project. And then upon successful completion of such, she would request the last 1/3 of that. However, she does work with counties and would consider billing on a monthly basis if it would work with our administrative or our financial system. So it would be a smaller amount over time. Consultants bring a lot to the table. They bring the expertise and the awareness of best practices. We eliminate bias when we're not engaging individuals who normally work within a department or a county. And then also by engaging a consultant, we actually keep all of our staff working, completing all of those essential tasks that are part of our business operations. So we don't let anything drop, and we don't shift work to other staff by virtue of entertaining this. The ARPA funding that has been earmarked for public health has been, hopefully will be very beneficial for us. It helps to support our infrastructure, and I believe that having the assistance of a consultant to help us with this project would be a definite benefit to support our infrastructure at this time. And also, it's just something that right now we haven't spent any of the money that's been earmarked for us. We've been fortunate to receive funding that has come from the federal government and has been administered through the Department of Health Services. And that's what we've been utilizing to fund additional COVID-related activities. That money that we've received as part of the COVID response can't be used to supplant or pay nursing staff for just our regular time, because there's an expectation that we're normal employees and we need to be paid through our normal processes. But we have been utilizing everything we can that has been given to us as part of the pandemic response to offset any need to actually utilize any of the ARPA funding thus far. So this is our first request to utilize the funding that's been earmarked for our services.
Thank you. Any other questions or concerns? All right, I'm going to call a vote then.
Chair,
Yes.
a typo on, according to mine, it says 3,350,999 on the financial review. That's on the first item. That should be 335,000. There is a typo there. It's on the.
Yeah.
Which one do I got open? It's on the first one, 14 HHS. Yeah, just regular 14.
Yeah.
Okay, does everyone know what he's talking about?
Yeah, and let me just put that back in context to make sure everybody's on the same page here. With the utilization plan that we just took action on, thinking was a good idea, there's, we have in here the 41,000 for this project, but then the remainder of the $335,999.90 is reappropriated towards the entirety of trying to make the budget work over the next 2 years. So we're all on the same page.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve with request for discussion.
Yes. So we didn't have a motion. Thank you, Mr. Murphy Lopez. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Cooey. All right, now we can discuss.
So my only request with this is just that, and I saw the response and I was kind of going down this. So just to lay all my cards out on the table for the committee, I'm a consultant. And I don't want to show everyone how consultants make money, but one of the ways they do is by requesting the entire amount. But when you have to bill time and expense, if you get done with your work before your 41K is up, then that money stays with the county. Otherwise, the consultant gets it. So
you like the way this one's set up?
So right now, according to Ms. Cahoot, they're negotiating. They haven't set up the billing. So my only request is just a request to bill by time and expense. If she wants to bill 3 times throughout the project, I don't care, or monthly or whatever. That doesn't matter to me. I'm just saying, just to make sure we keep as much money as possible.
Right.
Just negotiate time and expense if
Right.
possible and not
Okay.
lump sum.
Okay.
So that was all I wanted to say.
Okay, and that's possible, right? Rose?
Yes, I will do my best. I'll engage Ms. Cheney in a further discussion regarding her billing practices to see whether or not we can look specifically at the time and hours that the efforts that she puts into this project.
I think it's fortuitous that we have ARPA funds available, and this is something that we'd have to do anyway.
It is indeed, yes.
All right, all those in favor of spending money of the consultant to do the community needs assessment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the resolution is approved.
Thank you. And is there a time frame you'd like for me to return that information to you? Or should I have it available for discussion at the time it might be presented before the county board?
We'll work it out on our end
All right.
and try to get incorporated into the resolution language and get Attorney Wendell included on the conversation.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Number 15, employee bonus pay from remaining 2021 department funds, Sheriff's Department. Sheriff Porter? No.
Mr. Chair, this is Melissa.
Yes, Melissa.
So
Chair of the Law Enforcement Public Safety Committee.
I am, thank you. Yes, so I'm a little surprised to see this on this finances agenda, because my recollection from our meeting and our discussion on this topic was that we had asked the administrator to look into other departments that had, because I know we already had this discussion about HHS having leftover funds from 2021 budget, and now the Sheriff's Department. And our recommendation, my recollection is our recommendation was to instruct the administrator to gather up all of the funds that were left over from 2021 and come up with a plan to give bonuses across the county and not just to individual departments which are essentially the biggest departments who have the most luxury of having budgets that could potentially have leftover money. So it's a little unclear to me how this got on the since it did not come from our committee to go to finance.
Well, I'll have Sheriff Porter perhaps address that. Not perhaps, he will.
Supervisor Luck, if you can correct me if you feel I'm mistaken on this, but it would have been our May, the very first official Public Safety Committee meeting. We brought this forward to that meeting, and I thought my belief was the discussion was that we were going to bring it forward to Finance and Personnel to, I guess, kind of continue that discussion on bonuses. So we developed a plan. Actually, I think we had the plan developed for that meeting, and it was approved to be moved on to Finance and Personnel.
So Administrator Langrick, I think we had asked you in that meeting if you would be willing to look at this and come up with a plan. Is that not correct? You were thinking we would have that discussion here at Finance? You might be correct, Sheriff Porter.
I don't have a full plan prepared for across the entire county. No, I don't.
Okay. So, I guess I'm echoing what Supervisor Murphy Lopez was talking about in that, I'm not opposed to the bonuses. I think that I would love to see bonuses given. I think it would be good if we could take the money from the Sheriff's Department and take the money from HHS and any other departments that were left over, and then come up with a way to give bonuses across the county instead of just in these two departments. Was really, I think, the gist of our conversation at Public Safety.
Okay, somehow this discussion doesn't seem right to me because we don't even have a motion before us yet. I'm going to ask someone to make that motion. Then we'll discuss it.
I'll move.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson, seconded by Mr. Coy. All right, now we can have a discussion on the motion. You heard the overall objection or concern is that shouldn't additional funds, budgeted leftover funds, be more universally distributed, or should it be earmarked by department? Mr. Murphy.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to postpone until a plan for looking at the entire county operation can be looked at.
Okay, we have a motion to postpone. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Manning.
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Look.
So the
Yeah.
only addition I would like to make to that motion would be that it happen in 2022. That we do this as soon as possible so that we can be giving out bonuses in this fiscal year and not have it wait until next year.
Okay, would you accept that amendment to your motion to postpone? Okay. Yes.
Can I still say something, Mr. Chair? I understand where the committee is coming from and where Melissa's coming from with this. Obviously, last year was a very strange year with COVID and the lack of employees for our department. And I just would like to say that I'm not saying that other departments don't deserve bonuses, but last year with our staffing levels at the way that they were, we were working 6 deputies short for most of the year. I did the math with all the overtime that was worked out. And for road patrol deputies, they worked approximately 51 extra shifts above their normal working hours, if you average that out. And for the jail, it was approximately 23 extra working shifts. I'm not sure of any other department in the county that their employees had to work that many extra hours away from their families.
You. Mr. Carroll.
It sounds like we've just added another job on Administrator Lengrich's plate. I wondered how much effort and how feasible it would be to do this overall assessment.
I'll ask Mr. Langrich to address that.
We're anticipating our audited numbers to come back, August 29th, I think is our day. We're expecting Bill to produce us a document that shows solidification on what funds are, what we had for overage. So then post that, it would be figuring, and then all the employees, how to categorize the employees. Is it all employees that are full-time or part-time or classifications? And did they have to be here at a certain period of time? And there'll be some other decision points we'll have to make. My initial response to this, it'll be a topic of department head on trying to best sort out and categorize and trying to use the people of this organization that are a lot smarter than me and getting our heads around how we would do that.
Okay, thank you. And Administrator Langrich, I will not put you on the spot. Nope, I won't do it in this case. I'm not gonna do it. Do I have any more comments on this? Mr. Murphy?
Mr. Chair, I just want to say that, if we know that the sheriff's department came out ahead, 150 grand, 200 grand in the 2021 budget, I'm assuming we can run those numbers for all the other departments too. So I guess I'm not quite understanding why we have to wait for those audited numbers. Why can't we just look and see where we ended up across all our departments? We have extra money, give those bonuses out across the county operation. I don't want to make it too complicated. I understand what you're saying, Chief Deputy Wallace, but we got to think about all departments. We can't just think about one, and we've been guilty of that. And it just kind of creates a snowball effect and leaves problems, I think, for this committee about fairness.
Administrator Langrich, you had the mic in your hand. This time I did see you. Oh,
Mr. Chair,
yes, Ms.
I
Luck.
just want to remind people that we did not allow HHS to use their extra money to give bonuses to their
Correct.
a couple months ago.
Well, right now we have a motion to postpone before us.
Mr. Chair, just one
Yes,
comment.
Mr. Cooley.
So that 163,000 is some departments and probably multiple departments' budget, their whole budget. And we're talking about doing other things with services that we provide that maybe we can't provide. I have a hard, I get that people worked hard and did their job and did extra. I get that. But at the end of the day, we still have to look at the whole county as a whole too. I'm not against giving bonuses either, but at the end, if I'm gonna go into a budget meeting in 2 months, I'm gonna say I'm gonna cut this and cut this and cut this, and I spent it here. I mean, I could see places to spend that. We talk about retaining people and everything else. Well, our health insurance is the biggest question we have, or continues to be a big question, and putting that money towards that and changing the way that operates, in my opinion, would make more sense than to just a one-time bonus is here and gone, even for the people. And if you can get the people what they really want in the long term, I think it's a much better choice.
Okay, Mr. Cooley, thank you. Your comment then would lead me to believe that you would be voting against postponement because you'd like the main motion considered.
Not necessarily at all. I would say
Oh,
I'm in favor of the postponement so we can understand, but understand in the whole thing that I think that spending this money for the right reasons, and the right reasons are not maybe necessarily a bonus. They may be to set us up for long-term retainment, which could mean changes in healthcare, could mean getting people paid what they're supposed to be paid right now. Things along that line would make more sense for our retention than to go and spend $72,000 and it's gone. And I don't mean that, the people that get the money, yes, it'll be nice, but they might want something else in the long term. If we need to look long term more than just quit.
okay. I think we're ready to vote on that motion to postpone. All those in favor of the motion to postpone signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Oh,
Thank you, Mr. Gotcho, I believe. One no vote, the motion to postpone carries. Number 16. Discussion and possible action on a courthouse roof repair change order with the use of ARPA funds. Mr. Langrick.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to recommend resolution to accept interstate roofing change order proposal to include replacement of the flat roof over the causeway and new jail addition of the courthouse, and to recommend finance personnel, that is you folks, funding the project through ARPA funds. During the process of addressing the deficiencies on the historic courthouse roof, we have uncovered some rapidly deteriorating spots connecting the flat roof of the causeway and the new jail addition of the courthouse. Interstate Roofing currently is, well, they were on site at the time we'd wrote this, and they had submitted a proposal change for $72,200 to address the deteriorating spots. Public Works Standing Committee took action on this in May and is recommending action taken with the use of ARPA funds. This fits into the ARPA appropriations policy that we had just recommended onto the county board as well. Attached in it then is the proposal from Interstate Roofing. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anytime you have a flat roof, it's going to leak. Tell Frank Lloyd write that. And we have one here. This is good use of ARPA funds. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Cooley, seconded by Mr. Carroll. Were we able to catch those guys before they left?
It's a tear down and they would have to come back and do it at a different time. It's a different crew and they have to fit it in their schedule.
Will Randy have to repair the lawn again?
I don't think so. It's flat, so I don't think we're going to have as
Doing
much.
a great
We're going to
job.
have a whole lot of scaffolding.
Okay. That was a bird walk there. Okay, all those in favor of using ARPA funds to fix that flat roof signify by saying aye. Aye.
hey,
All right. Buy some shingles, Mr. Landgraf. Membrane, buy a membrane.
Thank you, sir.
Number 17, administrative reports, classification and compensation policy, draft review for future action. Mr. Langrick.
Mr. Chair, this next section now, these items here are kind of put at you as informational type items. If you'd like to take action on giving guidance on how you want to see it shaped, but it's not intended that you're going to be moving all these pieces forward to county board or resolving them today. First item is the classification, compensation, and staffing authority policy. We have ever-changing changes in our to facilitate our different manning rosters and all of our wages. And you have to bear with me now, my computer's getting grumpy here on opening some of these documents. But if you remember, the compensation classification and authorization policy was a tool we had in place to capture all of our assignments on our positions. And now we're trying to incorporate the actual progression language as asked of us on how employees will hit the ground, and at so many months or so many years they take a step, the wage schedule. Let me see if I can get it pulled up here. Stand by. There we go. So just to reacquaint you with this document, the main changes that you're looking at in this document is going to be in the policy language regarding progression through the wage schedule. Another element of this, well, let me back up here. Another element, probably the most important you need to take a look at as a county represent, or as a body representing the county, is underneath your policy performance goals here. We're saying that this policy for compensation is to establish and support the following recruitment and retention goals with quantifiable performance indicators. And these are currently set right now at the organizational level. An average tenure for a regular Richland County employee should not fall below the national average for public employees as reported through the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Last time I checked, that was around a 6-year average, but I'm assuming with the Great Resignation that number is probably creeping down. At the department level, no department should experience more than 25% turnover in a period year, with consideration given to unreasonable circumstances involving smaller departments with limited staff. So it's another type of a performance goal that we're looking to achieve with this. At the position level, no vacant regular full-time or vacant part-time regular position should go 60 days without finding a candidate that meets minimum qualifications. So these are the standards we're looking to put in place to say we might have potentially compensatory types of problems. Not always. There's other variables that go within employment and recruiting and those types of things. But this is kind of our again, our quantifiable performance marks that we're looking at. Then we have our policy here, or I'm sorry, our philosophy. Certainly recommend you take a look again at section 1 on the top there of your philosophy and your principles regarding compensation. We have a little bit of definition language. We talk about our pay grades and wage scales and our progressions. Start getting into progression here on page 6. And this is where we're starting to relate it then to the wage schedule tables. We're saying that new hires will be placed at a step 3. Remember, we're working off a Carlson-Detman 8-step system. With this type of a plan, we're saying we're going to shave. We've already shaved step 1. We'd be shaving step 2, and we're going to be starting at a step 3. And then we'd be progressing after. You'll start at a step 3, and then employees past probation will be moved up to a step 4. Employees with 1 to 2 years of continuous employment then will be moved up to a step 5, and on we go. Different with Pine Valley. Pine Valley would be maintain 1 step ahead of us at a step 4, and then would have the same type of a progression scheme of past probation, and then so on they go. We have language in here that prohibits at the present progression up to step 7 and step 8 for general and step 8 for Pine Valley. It's built on the presumption that going forward into the next budget year that we're going to allow additional 2 steps for general employees and an additional 1 step for Pine Valley employees. Then we have our appendices section here. We're redefining some of our categories of what it is full-time versus part-time. And these language definitions here are based on the requirements for the Affordable Care Act. So certainly encourage taking a look at those as well. And I think those are probably the biggest pieces. Past that then, when you get into the appendices of the document, you're looking at, again, our authorization tables here, where we're laying out the positions, pay ranges and grades that they're on the schedule, their weekly capacity, and their categorization of regular, full-time, regular, part-time, etc. Past that, then we have our existing wage schedules, the two different appendices, one for general employees and then one for Pine Valley. And then do keep in mind that there are other ones that are out there, like our folks on collective bargaining agreement, our deputies, some other folks here and there. So this policy is out there for your viewing. We'll get it back out to department heads as well and anticipate bringing this back to you folks in July, possibly August. Again, some of the presumptions that are built into it coincide with financial planning and with the budget process on we're going to be able to afford to allow continued progression on the Carlson-Detman plan as we've established as one of our goals through strategic planning and previous resolutions. Mr. Chair, that's all I have on that. I can take questions on it, or if you'd like me to move on to the next agenda item, I can do that as well.
I'll just make a comment. I still believe that Carlson-Detman gave us a fine plan several years ago, but they only gave us half a plan, in my opinion, because they didn't include anything in that plan to get us down the road. I mean, it was like it was frozen in time. Maybe that was our fault for not asking for more, but still think we only got half a plan, and now we're trying to go forward from that. Just a comment. Mr. Langrick, why don't you continue with your county financial condition report?
Okay, this is a kind of a preliminary to get you folks oriented to the plan. There's been a lot of talking points, a lot of conversations, and a lot of thought given into how we're going to maneuver going into the financial future. I'm anticipating right now on having a financial condition report, financial plan, a proposal, and a capital improvement program proposal delivered out at a June 17th, 2022 meeting at the Phoenix Center. Type of the meeting yet to be determined. I'm approaching it as a public information briefing that is going to be accessible to, certainly encouraged all supervisors to attend, posting it as a quorum may be present, making sure folks, the media know, and making sure that other constituents and such are aware of it. Other options of which I'd like you to consider while we go through the topics is, do you want to do it that way, or do you want to have it more as a formal hearing and allowing more of a public feedback at that meeting, as that might, when do you want to hear from the public? You want to hear from them in June, or do you want to have everybody sit and kind of wait on it a month, or not even a month, a few weeks? Or do you want to do it as a full-on finance and personnel committee meeting that day? So keep that in mind as we go through here. The entire presentation that's going to be rolled out on that day, anticipated to start at 9:30, and hopefully we're out of there by midnight, is the long story of it. Reasonably, the presentation I'm thinking is probably going to be about 2-hour presentation, maybe 2.5-hour presentation, filling up the morning. And how we go past that, again, I would defer to your folks' guidance. But looking at kind of going through top to bottom on establishing authority to plan, going through the financial condition of the county, we're going to take a look at it from a perspective of debt management, perspective of audit and budget performance. We're going to take a look at county funds and fund balances, and then we're going to review our 2022 Richland County budget. We'll be heavy in the 2022 budget, understanding the different decision points that we had and the decisions that we made in building that budget, because that's going to be the premise of what we're going to be planning for 2023 through 2027, okay? We'll take a look at the strategic plan, some of the financial elements that kind of coincide with the considerations for planning, as well as then rolling out a financial plan, a capital improvement program planning. We'll then kind of circle back around and do a little bit of county comparison data to kind of put it in comparison to what our counterparts are doing, establish kind of at about the same size and demographics. We'll take a look at our population trends and demographics again, a small summary on that. And then we'll hit a determination of services priorities and services continuation, a scheme of how we're going to tease that out and address that. Then a final recommendation from the administrator. This kind of goes in then to for the rest of the year layout. On the 17th, the presentation and a recommendation is going to be given. It will be passed over then to the finance and personnel, you folks, on this is what your administrator is recommending to you. At that point, then, it's anticipated that on July 5th, finance and personnel will have heavy discussion and possible action then on the plans and the proposed resolutions of how we're going to navigate through the decisions, with a potential then, that should be July and not different word there, We'll have Richland County Board potentially adopting a plan and resolutions in anticipation then of coming back around with a 2023 budget guidance, and how we're going to release that out. So the administrator's recommendations, there'll be attached matrices that we're going to review that'll depict the many identified assumptions, projections, the needs, the desires, the recommendations, and the potential reductions. The administrator will continue working with those drafted documents to arrive at the financial plan that meets the goals of aligning our county's expenditures with revenues and aligning our capital investments with our priority needs. The matrices, like last year's budget, are designed to allow you folks to make recommendations and adjustments and changes. So we're trying to capture dollar figures and an understanding where if there's something that you folks want to see added back in or taken back out, that you have other levers at the table to offset those adjustments and those costs. Okay. So with that being said, the first document that we're going to, well, not the first document, but one of the main documents that we're going to lay out and be making recommendations off, it's going to be a very kind of clumpy, I think, negative context. We started calling it the butcher block last year. This is kind of our financial planning scheme document that lays out the next 3 years of anticipated expenses. So let me kind of walk you through what you're looking at here so you can start gauging it and understanding what's going to be presented then on the 17th and then onward to discussion on July 5th. So in looking at this document, let me kind of maybe capture the categories for us, and then we'll start talking about the sections here. So from left to right, you're looking at the departmented impacts, the description of the proposed action. We have a narrative section there of understanding that what the impact of the services is. And then you'll see the years laid out for financial impact. Now, keep in mind when we're talking about the financial impact, it's all in context of a 2022 balanced budget. So we're taking the 2022 as the baseline, and we're saying for years 2023, 2024, and so on, is it an addition, or is it a subtraction, or is it the same? And all of our values, to make it more confusing, if they're a positive number, that's making our gap bigger. And if it's a negative number, that's making our gap smaller. So on the first section of the document, on the very top, you're going to see our forecasted expenditures of our assumptions and our commitments. It starts with our wages and salaries. These are numbers that we'd farmed out to Tom, and he had gotten back onto us of, in moving forward with our goals of that we've had with finance and personnel on of incorporating a CPI, Consumer Price Index, or a cost of living increase, and then also our goals of trying to continue progression on the Carlson-Detman schedule. I asked Tom to produce what the impacts would be for the year of 2023 of having a step increase on the schedule plus a 5% cost of living increase. And then the same then going on to 2024 was a step increase plus a 5% CPI, assuming that our cost of living and inflation are going to continue going up. For 2025, hopefully inflation starts tamping down, so we're at a 4% CPI. At that point, they'll be at the top of the Carlson-Detman schedule. 2026, they're at a 3% CPI. 2027, they're at a 3% CPI. So that all got costed out. Asked Tom of what of that can be absorbed in revenues that they have coming in. We added in the other ones too of FICA projections, WRS projections, health increases, workers' compensations, projecting workers' compensation premium increase costs. So those are all things were kind of factored in. And the direct question was, how is that going to impact directly to the levy? In this case, it doesn't. It comes out of revenues from Tom, from Pine Valley. But then we have to account then of potentially reduced funding back to us through additional revenues, which we address later. But just kind of showing you the example of what this top section lays out. So we have Pine Valley. We're doing the same thing with Highway. My document here is grumpy with me, so let me reopen it again. The lesson here, John, is that you cannot open up 30 different PDFs at the same time. Oh, that's the wrong document. Okay, so we're going through, we have, let me do down here. We're going to have highway section, then we go through our general employees. General employees is mostly, we're talking about levy money right now. Then we factor in dental, different property liability insurances, et cetera. Section 2 now is dedicated in the same theme. It's our impacts on our assumptions on revenues, okay? So that whole section is kind of dedicated to how do we think we're going to have adjustments and changes in the revenue flows that we're anticipating again for 2022. Then we get into our section 3 then kind of captures that. So our estimates right now, outlook not so good. 2023 with trying to do everything we wanted to do puts us at a 1.5 gap. Going forward into the future years, $1.3 million, 989,000. So it's a mountain to climb. To add to that, then we start talking about our departments in estimated increases. We'll have sections then here for each department as we go through. Some of those you'll see, the majority of them is coming as increased expenditure projections. Some of those are reductions though. So if we have, again, if it's a positive number, it's adding more gap to us. If it's a negative number, that's good for us budgetarily wise because it's reducing our gap. So then the next section will be consideration for all the different departments. Final section below that, then you're going to hit health insurance determinations, which will likely not be in place by the 17th, but we keep on here as a placeholder because we're going to be using the same document then to build 2023 budgets and trying to understand what's moving into the future. Section number 6 then is kind of all the additional levers of ways we think that that we can arrive at balancing. It's has in our tax deed sales, sales tax, interest incomes, property tax, wheel tax, undesignated fund spending, accounting for fund balance returns, discussions like we just had today with, we think we have overages and sheriffs coming forward and health and human services, American Rescue Plan funds, which we just took action to try to relocate some of those to try to help with this, managing this problem. Opiate settlement, which kind of remains a mystery on exactly how we're going to be able to use those funds. Most of it is queued towards new opioid abatement services versus supplementing and offsetting existing services. Federal infrastructure bill, more in language comes out on that. Most of it is kind of shovel-ready projects and requires us to fund on the front end at 5 to 10%, but there might be additional languages to come out. We have placeholders in here yet for Pine Valley, knowing that they're operating with a contingency fund, with a capital improvement fund, and then also with a debt service fund that we've been bringing back for operational expenses. There's funds we've identified with the Housing Authority. We have a placeholder on here for asset sale of land and buildings, for equipment. We have considerations for doing something other than what's proposed on the top for wages and compensations. We also have in here a box that I'm hoping to try to unravel with the one petition that we had here today with our ambulance consultant. There is a mechanism in our tax levy limit that allows for exemptions to that tax levy for counties that operate an ambulance service. The tax exemption line is for, I think it's like for emergency medical types of services. It's my understanding that some counties have been able to, and they've been able to go beyond the established debt service levy with that exemption for expenses against ambulance, and have also been able to justify different expenses potentially against dispatch center and some other types of operations. It comes as an added tax impact to taxpayers, but it does allow you a little bit of a release valve on hitting the operational debt levy limit. Other items in here include operational increases from reduction in short-term borrowing, if we're going to increase that or reduce it, or if we want to try to take any types of small remaining projects of maintenance and equipment purchases and bundle them into what's considered capital improvements and put that on short-term notes to, again, make your space underneath for your operational levy. Approaching Ho-Chunk Nation potentially for road grants, utilization of working lands fund, cross departments, potential changes in our news posting obligations could be another small savings. And then the final two levers on here is referendum and operational notes. Both are possible, but are seen as your last resort type of an action. So With all those things in place, we're trying to arrive then at the bottom here underneath your estimated annual gap of getting these ideally at 0.00000. How and if we can arrive at that in the first couple of years be a challenge. Getting there in the last couple of years seems like it's a growing necessity as we are expending all of our small little little saved up funds that we have. So the final recommendation again and the full rundown of this document we'll be planning on going through on June 17th. We'll be covering it kind of line by line to make sure everybody understands. It is going to be very tedious and you will grow sick of hearing my nasally voice by the end of that meeting. But again, I certainly recommend you kind of get familiar with what this document looks like, because this is going to be kind of the playbook or the map for discussion points then for you folks in July. Maybe I can pause there as this is kind of a bigger piece to see if there's any questions or concerns with this approach.
Any questions, Steve, Mr. Carroll?
I'm hoping we'll be able to get a glimpse of this on our iPads before that meeting so we can kind of be up to speed on it.
The document here was placed in the folders within the last 24 hours, so it should be in your folder. It's not on the website, and if you don't have it in your folder, let me know. So, but do keep in mind, Steve, that when I approach the 17th, I'll be adjusting things to try to make it fit of what I think is the best interest for you folks to consider. I'm hoping not to delete anything out of here to make sure that it's still captured as a consideration point. I'm visualizing like I was an example on here to take them at random. If we don't have space in this year, I see things either getting shifted to the right, free up current monies, or I see things getting lined out and then negating it out of the formulas of addition, but still leaving it in there as a strike line to understand that it was a requested need that I'm recommending that we defer.
Okay, thank you. We talked, Clint and I, about what should we do on June 17th? Should we have a public hearing? Well, no, we don't need to have a public hearing, but we do have, I believe, to have a public opportunity for the public to comment. And this is the beginning of the budget process, and rather than catch, I remember in other budget years, we've caught departments maybe off guard, or, well, gee, I didn't know you're going to cut this, or you can't do this. Well, let's get them in early and have people comment. I know you're doing financial planning. This is why I think that we ought to continue funding congregate meal centers, for instance. So, and I'll limit comment to 2 or 3 minutes, so we're not going to have long drawn out things. But I believe it's important to bring the public in. One of the things Clint mentioned there, the last 2 items, public referendum. We could have, you could have a referendum on everything the county does, for instance. Now I'd like to see our polling place people trying to explain that to. That's why they elect us. Okay, that's why we're sitting here. So we could have a referendum, though, like the schools do. Can we spend more money than out under state current statute? We only know of one. I believe there was one in the state, I believe, to build a county home. Is that right?
The only successful operational levy referendum that I'm aware of is Greene County had one, and it was specific to a levy operation increase for just their nursing home,
Right.
Pleasant View nursing home.
So the June 17th meeting is important, and I think it'll be well attended. You can pass the word to your constituents that this is where we begin the process. And we begin the process of making tough decisions. Do we need this? If we didn't, I'll defend this till the day I die. If we didn't need it, if we we didn't have it right now, would we start it? I think that pretty much sums up the kind of decisions we'll be making about everything the county does. Mr. Langrick, yes. Now, I think 9:30, did we say?
9:30 is the plan right now. Plan on doing the entire thing also via WebEx and also recording it, knowing that that's not going to be terribly convenient for everybody, and make sure that it gets captured so that it can be viewed at a more convenient time.
Mr. Langrick, continue, please.
The next document that we're going to take a look at is going to be the capital management planning. And again, it's a summary type document with spreadsheets. It stretches out across an entire workbook, so it's not quite as easy to PDF and make friendly. But let me kind of pull up what a worksheet looks like for a department here. So as an example here, and to make it awkward for Clay, I've got the sheriff's up. It's broken down again by year, and these are capital projects that we're considering to have a $5,000 value of more and stretching out over multiple years of life expectancy. So it's broken down by years, and the idea is that eventually we might be projecting out 10 years, but as this is kind of our first go at it, we thought it more appropriate to let's just tune it down into 5 years, see how it's working, so we're not over projecting, and then your span of left and right controls kind of gets a bit skewed beyond the point of reality. So we'll tone it down into 5 years. It goes by year. It's from left to right here. We're indicating the need or the estimated expense of the object. And then we start getting into funding source. So we're talking about funding it out of annual operation levy, or are we funding it out of general obligation short-term notes, essentially our short-term Fund 92 that we've been doing the last 2 years. Our Fund 75, or 2.9, will be past that in March 3rd, so we shouldn't have any more fundings coming out of that. Our bigger projects like a radio tower would fall underneath a general obligation debt long-term bonding. Then our other revenues in the darker green is it's going to be funded through foundation partnership funding, through federal or state grant funding, or through service fees. And then we have a block of deferred, reduced, or removed type of expenses over here, followed by notes. So again, anticipating that we're going to try to build this out. And right now it's kind of put together as a wish list with everything funneling to the front page. So you can see at the very top of the pyramid type of a view of all those numbers then funnel into the front of your identified needs again. The total projects that are identified for funding, where those sources are coming then from, if it's levy, if it's debt service, or if it's coming from one of the other funding sources. And then when the proposal comes to you, this number, the red column here of deferred, is going to grow, because right now this is all built on, we're going to have about, it's anticipated that we're still comfortable with going forward with $1 million of short-term notes. Past that, then we have our debt information for you. You have our total debt that we're anticipating, again, underneath the expectation of doing the $8.5 million radio project, plus continuing annually with $1 million in short-term notes. The total remaining debt levy capacity that you have in a dollar amount, and then what that ratio is, the percentage. So the idea is that you're going to be able to gauge at a glance, kind of putting it into two graphs of yellow is all of our needs, green in that year is what we've decided to fund. When the administrator pushes over things of saying we can't do this and we're going to defer doing this, the red column will grow, but then you're going to understand at the same time how much legal capacity that you have to try to address that red line. And as you go through all the departments here, again, it's going to be capturing all the different projects, where they're going to be funded from, or if they're deferred, and then a little bit bolstered notes on understanding what the project is and why there's a recommendation to do without it. Is there any questions on this one? It's a little bit messier yet, and I've got to get everything tied together to ensure that our calculations and all of it's put together. When I put it in a finalized PDF, I'm thinking that I'll probably leave off the 2028 through 2032 off of the bottom of the department worksheets for the sake of just adding more clutter to it. It's already confusing enough. We did have a placeholder of $40,000. I don't know if it arrives yet in the next 10 years, but an understanding of making sure that there's some view on what are we doing with the jail and a justice center, our buildings and infrastructure, to start having that conversation so that we can also cue that into understanding how we're prioritizing on taking care of this building versus are we queuing for the next building. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The document right there is not in our PDF right now, right?
It's in the folder, but it's not on the website right now. Yep.
Can I just ask one question?
Yes.
I just want to say a comment too. I think, yes, it's a lot to absorb, but this is really great. The organization, you do just keeps getting better every year. So I appreciate knowing kind of the framework that how confusing is this whole county government and you're somehow organizing it all. So I just really appreciate that. Wanted to ask, how will capital projects get on Team B? Who decides?
Can I have you say that one more time?
19B, that attachment?
Yep.
Who decides how capital projects get on this?
So right now it's kind of based as I don't want to say a wish list, but most departments understand the financial situation that we're in, and they've come forward with, and these are things that we think we absolutely kind of need, a needs list. So right now the list is kind of built as a sitting on Santa's lap and like, this is what I'd like for Christmas kind of a thing. When I bring it to you folks on the 17th, though, I'm going to be saying this is what I think the absolute priorities are. These things I'm thinking we shift down a year. These things here I think we should consider doing without. Or we need to adjust the number on borrowing or some other type of a funding mechanism to cover more of our needs. Does that answer your question?
So I think, if I understand right, the answer is department heads. And you take what department heads put on the wish list and separate them into two categories of what to go forward with and what to push off.
Yes. From this perspective right now, you can see, so the first year is kind of skewed because we have $8.5 million of a radio tower project that's in there. But then kind of past that, outside of some operational funds that we might have, it's really kind of comes down to about $1 million target. And maybe there's, again, a $500,000 in operational expenses. But when we start looking at 2.5, 2.5, 1.2, 4.6, trying to fit that into each of those years closer into a 1.5 or $1 million pie is going to be a challenge.
Thank you.
Could I build on what Sean said?
So Carol.
That kind of leads to my concern that there may be some more capital concerns that the department heads don't even know without doing some kind of facility assessment. And those are the things that worry me. And I know that'll be a lot of effort to get a better handle on, but let's not forget at some point we need to do that, or this document's not telling us what we need to know.
So those are the two major matrices that I feel like is going to be kind of, again, your playbook or your map to go with on July on sorting out what stays, what goes, what gets prioritized and shift to different years. The third tool that I plan on presenting on the 17th is going to be a series of resolutions. And this is found underneath the cover letter on item number 19. So I'm envisioning with these as well to bring forward our resolutions that kind of match our strategic plan, or some of our goals from strategic planning on evaluating services. You'll see in there a template of again, these will be potentially tailored to different departments, different services, where we're defining that we're in a financial situation and we have strategic plans calling for prioritizing services and reduction of levy expenditures on non-mandated services. And so we'll have different language that says, now therefore be it resolved, Richland County Board of Supervisors, that the so-and-so department services has been identified for future funding reductions and possible separation from county control. Be it further resolved that the Oversight Committee to be named is tasked to work in conjunction with the county administrator, supporting staff and community partners to consider services, develop and evaluate options, and make a recommendation to the county board on future operations of that department and services. And be it further resolved that the so-and-so committee is specifically tasked with the following: evaluate services under the guidance of the service consideration matrix. And that matrix was approved at the last Rules and Strategic Planning Committee meeting. It captures your elements of strategic plan on page number 5 of, like Marty had said at the beginning, you know, if this was a service we weren't already doing, would we start doing it? A series of different questions like that. Finalize the response with a majority vote from your committee, and then submit this response to the county administrator to present to Rules and Strategic Planning Committee, Finance and Personnel Standing Committee, and the Richland County Board. Number 2, develop a course of action if possible where the model of ownership and operation of services is retained by the county, but in which there's no foreseeable county levy dollars are needed for any future operation or capital expenditure. This may be an alternate to, but in which required levy dollars needed for operation or capital expenditures do not exceed amount. So there's some, again, it's just kind of a draft. Number 3 is develop a course of action if possible where the model of ownership of facilities and grounds is retained by the county, but in which all operations are transitioned outside of county control, and in which no foreseeable county levy dollars are needed for any operations or capital expenditures. Number 4, develop a course of action if possible where the model of all ownership and facilities and grounds and operations are transitioned outside county control, in which no foreseeable county levy operations are needed for levy dollars are needed for any operations and capital expenditures, and with consideration given to liquidation and sale of some or all properties and equipment. Number 5, develop a course of action if legally possible for discontinuation of services, including elimination of county funding, release or reassignment of county staff, necessary policy changes, and appropriation or liquidation of all assets, grounds, equipment, and facilities in the best interest of the county. Number 6, develop a course of action if possible by which a combination of elements above, out of which no foreseeable county levy dollars are needed for future operations and expenditures. Be it further resolved that so many dollars of American Rescue Plan Fund Acts will be provided to the committee or commission to conduct any necessary studies, appraisals, surveys, advertising, contracted services, legal work, or to support services during any transition. Be it further resolved that this committee, through the powers established of setting agendas, is responsible for completing these specified tasks no later than a date here on June 6 for the Finance and Personnel Standing Committee. Be it further resolved that if the committee, commission, board is unable to complete these tasks and deliver a recommendation to the Finance and Personnel Standing Committee, the county administrator is tasked with dissolving the department and services, provided services, grounds, facilities, and equipment effective on that date, by eliminating county funding, releasing and reassigning staff, preparing necessary policy changes, and appropriating or liquidating all assets, grounds, equipment, facilities in the best interest of the county. So, again, it's a series of several different things to help in our decisions with it. This, again, is built, so different pieces like this are kind of built underneath the context, again, of trying to use ARPA funds to see if it's possible to stretch services for some amount of time to try to gauge these different things. Can't promise that it is that way, having not worked out exactly what it's going to look like. You saw it, what I just saw, there's still a $600,000 gap to close up in entering into 2023, unless we shift like all the ARPA funds to 2023, and then that leaves us a problem of 1.7 million or so to fix going forward into the following year. But this is another tool that I see bringing to the table and a recommendation for you folks to consider to take to the county board, for the county board then to task oversight committees with assisting in developing these types of things, knowing that it's still going to take administrative support to help them arrive at course of action development and a final recommendation. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. This is a pretty big deal here, guys. This is where the rubber meets the road type resolution. So we're going to ask those oversight committees to do some real work. There's some real decisions. It's coming, so. We talked about, do we want to continue kicking the can down the road? Do we want to chop everything off right now? Do we want to start tearing the Band-Aid off one little bit at a time? Or we'd want to rip it off altogether? So this is the mindset that we have going in. Benefit time.
Mr. Chair, in your packet, you'll see, well, I'm taking a lot of time here. I'm sorry. I'll try to a little bit more brevity here.
Don't have to drive school bus.
So bottom line on this one is anticipate this coming to you in July, possibly in August, but it's in response to the committee having previously asked to investigate, in addition to taking a look at increasing essentially our vacation time or benefit time off. I was asked to to develop a course of action potentially on PTO, or to bring back an idea of how to increase in our existing schedule, and then also look at trying to accelerate when folks have access to it, not only just first years, but midterms and long terms. So the current proposal is on here. It captures on the left what we currently have, in the middle what the proposal is, and additional types of language that would kind of augment and go with it. We did have some, my PDF is not opening up again here. We did have some good feedback from some of our departments. Some of it has been incorporated into the changes. Some of it has not. But I will just kind of leave it at that and say that please take a look at this, so when we bring it forward with the complete compensation package, it doesn't catch you by surprise. And if you had any concerns on this not meeting what the previous Finance and Personnel Committee had asked for, by all means, let me know.
New purchasing card update.
Bottom line on that is, we've got them rolled out. We have 23 cards that were issued. We've got 5 that have not been picked up yet, and then we have 3 that were canceled or that we have shredded, as we've already had some personnel changes with it. Kind of our initial feedback is that it is working. We're still working out the mechanics on it, but overall, it's been a good thing for us. Information is being farmed out from courts through Willis, Cooper and Elliott to ETF to have them cost our plan. And they also have to see if we're going to be assessed service charge based on our current experience. So that is information is finding its way to them. I also have a third option that I'm having Cheryl send information out, and I will bring that back to you if it blossoms into a feasible financial solution for us, Mr. Chair.
The financial report.
They are included. Items number 23 and 24 are your cash trial balance. We have then the Richland County investments, and then the final one is just a brief summary on the audit that was conducted by myself and Financial Officer Clerk Kalish. Yes, item number 24 went through it on May 26th with Finance Officer and Clerk Derek Kalish. Had one discrepancy with a check, but we're able to work it out with the vendor, Mr. Chair.
Anyone see any need for possible action in any? Move down to 6 future agenda items. I can put you all on the spot individually, or just leave it.
Question would be to, again, on how you want to, what do you want the 17th to look like? Plan on presenting at 9:30 as a public information session in the AM. Did you want to have then a full-on Finance and Personnel Committee to actually discuss and engage and ask questions of yourselves at that meeting? Do you want there to be a notification given on a public hearing and allow public comment so you can have it as of that day to know what the comments are out there and reaching in July, or would you rather wait until July to have potentially public comment? Just trying to get a perspective on what do you think is the what types of information engagement do you want to be best suited for July 5th?
Yeah, I would say take this back to your standing committees and ask them. Big pardon.
At the latest, I'd like to get out by Friday to give everybody a week's heads up on it, because June 17th is already a week from Friday.
So you don't have a chance to have your standing committee meeting, but department head. Okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn June 17th.
Will you have a quorum there? Do you want a actual agenda, or do you want to
I
post it as a?
I want an agenda. We'll have a quorum. I'm sure. Thank you. Motion by Murphy, seconded by Williamson. In favor of adjournment, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Adjourned.
That update, so.